Hi everyone, and a very warm welcome to the Product Marketing Festival. We're about to kick off this epic day of content, but first, we are delighted to welcome Crayon, our headline sponsor, to the stage to open the day.
Good morning, customer marketers, product evangelists, pricing experts, and product marketers, and welcome to Day 2 of the PMA's Product Marketing Festival 2021. I'm Eric Manser, VP of Product Marketing for Crayon, the industry leader in market and competitive intelligence software, and I'm your host for today's events. That's right, I said Day 2 of the 2021 PMA Festival. In case you missed it, the team at the Product Marketing Alliance absolutely stuffed Day 1 with interactive workshops and fascinating roundtable discussions that dove deep into topics like pricing, garnering product reviews, and when not to use the popular audio-only social media app Clubhouse. While the workshops were probably better to experience in the moment, there's no reason why you couldn't and wouldn't head over to the on-demand content library at the PMA's website to find links to view the videos of those incredible roundtables. Subscribed PMA members will have unlimited access to the recordings from the festival, alongside previous event footage, exclusive articles, templates, frameworks, and much, much more. And if you're still not a member, what are you waiting for? Head to productmarketingalliance.com and sign up today. My company, Crayon, is proud to be the title sponsor for this year's event, and we couldn't be more excited about it. Crayon has a long-standing relationship with the Product Marketing Alliance and with product marketers all over the world who rely on our software to track, analyze, and act upon competitive intelligence data from around the internet and through their own communications networks. Our customers then activate that CI data through a variety of tools that help enable their sales, success, product, and executive teams. We at Crayon believe that the use cases for competitive intelligence go beyond simply using it for sales battle cards, and in fact, CI can drive real business impact all throughout your organization. Whether it's your product team finding valuable insights to direct their development roadmap, your customer success team being empowered to help fend off rivals who are trying to sign your clients away, or your C-suite using competitive intel to keep a finger on the pulse of the market, observing trends and making the hard decisions in a much more informed way. Crayon is the category creator. We've been around the longest, and we're recognized as the industry leader in competitive intelligence software. But please don't take my word for it. Industry organizations like the Product Marketing Alliance, independent market research firms like Forrester, and the enthusiastic reviews of our own users on G2 have said the exact same thing. Crayon is the competitive intelligence backbone that lets companies see and seize opportunities that create sustainable business advantage. And if you're a product marketer who is relentless in your pursuit of growth in spite of a crowded market, we would love to talk with you. Head over to crayon.co and request a free demo of our software, and while you're there, check out some of the amazing free content that Crayon has created over the past 7+ years. I myself have been involved with the Product Marketing Alliance for several years now when I was first invited to a private Slack team chock full of people just like me, product marketers in search of a community where we could share ideas and learn from each other. If you're like most PMMs, you've probably had to explain to your friends and loved ones what you actually do for a living on a multitude of occasions. Inside the friendly confines of the Product Marketing Alliance, each and every one of your fellow members knows exactly what you do for a living because they're in the thick of it day in and day out. Speaking of days, it is Tuesday, Day 2 of the PMA Festival, and it's a day that's packed with amazing content all built around some core product marketing themes. Today you'll hear presentations on subjects like narrative design and telling a great story, go-to-market strategies and managing product launches, and the big three of product marketing, as I like to call them, the all-important messaging, pricing, and positioning. Let's kick things off with a presentation that's so important right now as enterprise companies continue to rapidly grow and expand eastward into the Asia-Pacific region. Here's Xuan, Senior Product Manager at Wise, on launching a global product in APAC markets.
today I'll be bringing you through how to launch a product, why and how to localize. I'm Chee, APAC Head of Product Marketing at Wise. I enjoy uncovering user insights to influence product and launches. I'm a huge advocate for APAC customers and love championing their needs to the global teams. Wise is a global fintech company which aims to make your life easier when it comes to sending, spending, or receiving money around the world. It started when our founders, Tavet and Christo, realized how much it costs to transfer money between UK and Estonia. Tavet was based in London but paid in euros. Christo worked in London but was paying a mortgage in Estonia in euros. They decided to exchange money between themselves using the real exchange rate, like the one you see on Google, without markup and fees charged by banks. They realized millions around the world could do the same, and here we are today. Our mission is to power money for people and businesses in their global lives, to pay, to get paid, to spend in any currency wherever they are, whatever they are doing. Today, 10 million customers use us around the world, and we save them over £1 billion each year. So with the understanding of what Wise does and the service we offer, let's jump into why localization is so important. So here's an example of an ad by a luxury fashion brand, which received criticism around how solemn and dark it portrayed Chinese New Year. So Chinese New Year is an important festival for Chinese in a few Asia markets where family comes together to celebrate the reunion and the start of a new lunar year. And the way that the brand has chosen to portray family reunion is slightly different. It uses a lot of dark colors, which is not normal in celebrating and portraying Chinese New Year. And as a result, it got quite some negative backlash on this. So as international brands enter new markets, we want to ensure that we are adopting the right creative approach to gain the trust of our local audience. We need to resonate with the market, meet audience needs while maintaining our brand identity. So we definitely don't want to come across as an outsider brand just launching what worked previously in other markets and not take cultural nuances of the local markets into consideration. And that's why localization is so important. So I had the task of launching Wise multi-currency account and debit card in Japan, and here's some context on the product. It's a product that allows you to spend in multiple currencies at the real exchange rate, hold and convert over 50 currencies. Is really easy to apply online on our web and app. And before launching in Japan, we have already launched it in other parts of the world with fairly different positioning and fairly different creative approach. And before every launch, we look at the market landscape and speak with customers locally to get insights to inform our launches. Here's what we know about the market. Less than 10% of the population speak English. Cash is still king. However, the government is aiming to double cashless payments by 2025, which is good news for us. And here are the key insights from the interviews and surveys that we ran. We interviewed 15 residents, both expats and locals. We surveyed over 1,000 people living in Japan. Our key findings were that multi-currency product isn't well understood in the market. Price is of the top consideration. However, most people aren't aware of hidden bank fees when they spend in foreign currencies with their bank cards. Online shopping is huge in Japan. And lastly, it's a huge hassle for expats to apply for any form of bank account or cards in Japan. And then we develop actions from these insights to focus on what we need to do when launching our product in the market. For the first point, we decided that we really have to educate the market on the product benefits of a multi-currency account and card. For the second point, we want to show people how the Wise debit card can actually save them money since they care about pricing and saving money. For the third point, we like to call out the shopping use case, which we have not called out in previous launches in other parts of the world. And lastly, because it's such a hassle for expats to get access to account and cards, we really wanted to highlight the convenience of doing so with Wise. We then look at who we could potentially target. So across Japan, These are our main target audience that we narrowed down to. So there are 2.8 million expats in Japan. They need to send money back home and spend with the card locally in Japan or overseas when they travel around the region or go back home to visit their family. The second group are online shoppers. So there are about 20 million online shoppers who actually shop from overseas. What they want is to avoid high bank foreign transaction fees when paying in foreign currencies. And the last group, it's 20 million travelers who need to pay in foreign currencies when they are traveling for business or leisure. They want the convenience of not carrying cash around, and they want to save money on bank fees. However, because we launched the debit card when COVID struck, so we did not focus that much on the travel use case. We then looked at the competitive landscape, and as discovered in our customer research, multi-currency products awareness is fairly low. Expats mainly own debit card because they can't actually get credit cards in Japan. Locals use credit cards to earn points, but are paying high fees when they need to spend in foreign currencies. People know that they are being charged fees when they spend in foreign currencies, but they just don't know exactly what the different fees stand for. So there's a huge opportunity for us to educate the market here. We then compare ourselves against competitors on this grid, and the Wise account and card lets customers spend in the most number of currencies, has good multilingual UI, supports sending and receiving money besides spending, and it has a very low one-time sign-up fee with no annual fees, no foreign transaction fees. So in a nutshell, this is what we found. Japan is aware of high fees, the slow and inefficient ways of finance, but people are often too busy to seek better alternatives. They have accepted the old-fashioned and time-consuming processes when it comes to applying for account and card. And there's also a lack of better alternatives in the market, which explains why people aren't aware of better solutions, as we discovered in our user research. So what Wise really needed to do is to raise these issues, the old ways of payments, in a somewhat engaging and fun way. We needed to start a conversation and appeal to the market by tapping into the consumer problems and let them know that there's a better solution with Wise. So this is the problem statement. Banks often overcharge when spending in foreign currencies. It's also complicated to open an account or get a card. A customer would have to go to the branch, fill out forms, and these forms are most often all in Japanese. The whole experience, as described by customers, is just fairly clunky and painful. And with Wise, we are 4 times cheaper than banks to spend in foreign currencies. We offer customers the real exchange rate when they are spending. And besides that, we also offer multilingual app and web, similar sign-up process, and other features like multilingual customer support. So this is the approach that we took. We had to firstly demonstrate what hidden fees are, how this can be avoided with Wise. We had to appeal to Japan by tapping onto their grievances and showcase how Wise offers the solution to their problems and educate them on the product benefits that can help solve these problems. And lastly, we want to launch a kick-ass creative campaign relevant to Japan while communicating our product benefits. So this is the big idea and how we landed on it. We want Japan to step away from banks and to welcome Wise, this fintech player in the market. We want them to say goodbye to bank fees and inconveniences and say hello to Wise. So before we began creative brainstorming, we looked at advertising trends in Japan. We spoke with employees who work in our Tokyo office, and we look at what other companies were doing. So Japan market generally likes to have all the information presented up front, use cartoons or animes. This is very different to Wise. We often strive for a clean, minimalistic style guide. We don't have any Japanese designer in-house who would be able to grasp the local market nuances, and we decided to work with a local creative agency on conceptualizing. So after many rounds of agency pitches and revisions, we arrived at this Money Monster concept. So the monster portrays inconveniences and high fees in Japan, and we wanted to bring those issues to life by using this character. And it's also inspired by different Japanese elements like the origami, which the head symbolizes, and hanko stamp. So the hanko stamp is something that people in Japan would have and use for official purpose, like opening up a bank account. It represents something like their signature. So this was our design thinking, our starting point, and where we kicked off. And of course, after multiple rounds of iteration, here's the final creative output. We had a lot of back and forth between our design team and the external creative agency. We had to keep a good balance of speaking to the Japan market while ensuring that the creative meets our brand identity and guideline. So we had to pare down the design to make the artwork flatter and cleaner according to WISE guidelines. We also did an explainer video on how the product works in Japanese. We ran ads on paid social, Google Display, and more. On our landing page, we compared our fees against that of the competitors by commissioning a third-party data research to show Japan exactly how much cheaper it is to spend with WISE card, and to educate them on how much money they could actually save if they were to use our card to spend in foreign currencies. And in our emails, we also educated them on how they're actually being charged by banks, touching on things like exchange rate markup and foreign transaction fees by banks, and how exactly WISE can help them save more money. And here are the video ads that we ran across YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I really like the one with the monster. That's where we flush out the use case of online shopping and also travel. And I also really like the one where we had the temple in the background. So oftentimes what we felt worked really well for us was a shot of the product with like a landscape of the city that we are launching in the background, so that it's relevant to the local audience. Because localization is really a lot more than just simple translations. It's really important that we get this right, especially launching a brand new product in the market. And we actually tested the creative. We put the Money Monster creative to a test against the usual WISE creatives that we had run. So on email, the Money Monster creative actually outperformed the standard product shot with the card, as you could see on the slide. And on paid social, our Meet WISE creative with the card against a cityscape actually won the Money Monster creative. We still had tests running on other channels, but we had to pause them because fun fact, we used to be called TransferWise because we started off with our remittance service, and we very recently rebranded back in March to WISE because now we offer multi-currency account and card besides our money transfer service. And this card was launched before the rebranding was done, which explained why we had to pause some of the tests that we were running. So some iterations that we would make would be to include our branding up front, to be mentioned throughout the Money Monster video before we resume the testing. We should have done that at the start, but then we found through serving YouTube ads that most people drop out after a number of seconds and they didn't even get to see our card or the brand. So that's something we can definitely improve on. And just some feedback from people in Japan. They were really ecstatic to finally have the card in Japan, and also showed some love for our creative, our little Money Monster, as well as our card. So that's just an example of how we localize our product and our marketing efforts when launching a new product in a new market like Japan, right? But besides launching in a highly nuanced market like Japan, we have also localized our marketing efforts when launching the debit card in other markets, like for instance in Australia. So these are just some examples of the creatives that we put out in the market. When we launch in Australia, we tend to do a lot of fun creative content featuring some local activities that the market would be familiar with. We also do a lot of customer testimonials. For instance, these are real Australian customers who are living abroad, who are traveling abroad, who has experience with the Wise card. Cool. So here are the key learnings of a go-to-market strategy, right? Working on a go-to-market strategy and also localizing a product launch in a market like Japan. We learned that it's really important to talk to customers and user test the content multiple times before going live. So what you are seeing now has been tested with like Japanese employees, as well as our customers who are not using the card, who has not heard about the card yet. We got their feedback and tweak everything accordingly to refine them over time. Secondly is to really understand the use cases and needs that we are trying to solve. For instance, when we launched the debit card in Australia, it was positioned heavily as a travel card because travel money cards are very common in Australia. But then when it comes to Japan, domestic travel within Japan is pretty huge. And that's where our card may not be as beneficial because there's no need to spend in foreign currencies. So we made the decision to focus quite a fair bit on the online shopping use case. Thirdly, localization is really far beyond translation. Translation is just the basic. Of course, it needs to be done. But when we talk about localization, it has to do with the style that we are using, the colors, the characters, the way that we animate. So it's really all-encompassing. Fourthly, this is more a point for myself. So ways to ensure there's very prominent branding in every piece of asset that you're putting out there. Especially when it's a long form video content. And also the last one is to always sense check your creatives just to make sure that they resonate well with the market. So this corresponds with the point on user testing. Cool, so that's all I have to share. I hope you guys find it helpful. If you have any questions, just feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to have a discussion on localization, or if you need any advice or input on the APAC markets, I'll be happy to help you with them. Thank you.
an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Hello PMA Festival, I'm Eric Manser, VP of Product Marketing at Crayon and your host for the day's festivities. For some of you, it may be still pretty early in your workday, so grab an extra cup of coffee and get ready for a few more early morning sessions, including a very cool panel discussion in just about 30 minutes. My company, Crayon, is a market and competitive intelligence software provider to some of the biggest names in enterprise technology, including Salesforce, HubSpot, Dropbox, and Gong, just to name a few. Many of our customers make use of our tool set to activate competitive intelligence throughout their organization, not just for narrow use cases or to accomplish lower funnel objectives. It's the reason why I'm so interested in this next presentation, because product marketing teams are making more and more use of competitive intel as they create the go-to-market strategy for new products, so those efforts can lead to greater revenue impact down the road. Please welcome PayFit's Global Director of Product Marketing, Yannick Kpodar, with his presentation called From Product Launches to Predictable Revenue.
Awesome. Thanks a bunch, Rose. Can you hear me? Am I coming out loud and clear? Awesome. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, hey, welcome everyone. My name is Yannick Kpodar. I am the Global Product Marketing Director at PayFit. And on today's talk, I'll be sharing from product launches to predictable revenue. So just a couple words about me. I'm American, grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, also lived in San Francisco. I'm also French and I'm also African from a small little country called Togo. So quite international background. I'm also a former product marketing lead at LinkedIn in SF. And today I'm a current global product marketing director in a hyper-growth startup based in Paris. And so for some of you who love books too, I'm a big book reader. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to send them my way. And on some of the fun times, I like to spend some time as a professor in a couple of business schools. So teaching on strategy, leadership, product marketing. And for today's topic, we're really going to discuss from product launches to predictable revenue. And I guess starting with, why this topic is important, as Simon Sinek always says, to start with why. Well, I frequently, share that launch strategy can make or break your business. Now, it sounds kind of extreme, but it really is. You have a lot of studies out there, one by McKinsey Consulting, that estimates that over 25% of total revenue and profits can come from new product launches. And so essentially, launches are core to every business success. It's like, if you get this correctly, every time you introduce a new product to market or you open a new market, that has the potential to increase quite a lot of revenue. However, what's really interesting is that over 75 to 95%, these are the stats here, of new product launches introduced to the market fail. And that will obviously depend on your type of market, your country, locations, and so on. But I thought that was really, really interesting to see how important and impactful it can be. However, how unlikely it is to be successful, or at least looks like a lot of folks or a lot of companies still have not cracked the code. A couple of reasons really quickly here, super high level, is one is the inability to collect the right data and analyze it to be able to make the best strategy in terms of product pricing, positioning in the market. Another one is inability or lack of resources to not only create demand, but to sustain it over time. Because it's one thing to launch a product and to get instant reaction and traction. It's another thing to sustain it over quarters, over years into the market. And last but not least, especially on the B2B side, it's poor enablement of your sales and customer success team that are obviously key to ensuring the conversion rates. So that's kind of really what you can find online and some of what other folks are saying in terms of why launches fail. But I want to take a bit of a step back and kind of talk about, well, let's define what a product launch actually is so that we're all on the same page. A product launch refers to a business's planned and coordinated effort to debut a new product to the market and make that product generally available for purchase. However, a product launch, although it serves many purposes for an organization, one of them being giving customers the opportunity to buy a product, it also helps the organization build anticipation for the product, gather valuable feedback from early users, and create momentum in the industry so that you can be recognized, in your sector. And that's from our friends at Product Plan. Now, the thing is that a lot of people think actually that small businesses are the ones that typically tend to fail, but actually even large organizations fail plenty of time too. The only difference is that they typically have a lot more resources and financial backing to keep launching again and again. And just sharing a couple of cases here, I might be kind of dating myself here, but the case of Sony PlayStation 3 that lost over $3 billion in sale for their PS3 consoles back in the years. And this is a company that's international, it's absolutely global, tons of resources, and they still messed up a launch back in those days. The reason is, well, a couple of things. They had built a revolutionary product that was, had Blu-ray technology that was ahead of its time back in 2006. It was way ahead of their competitors in terms of Xbox 360, Nintendo Wii. They just had this amazing technology. The problem is that they had risked losing money on every unit and thinking that they can recoup some of the sales on the actual PlayStation game sales. The problem is that they got their COGS incorrect. When you're looking at a new product launch, a very important thing is to understand the cost of goods sold. And there basically it was taking them about $800 to build a model, and they were selling it for about $500. So you can see that there's already a bit of a mismatch in terms of the overall business strategy for this launch. In addition, customers wanted very affordable, easy to use online solution, which didn't necessarily rely on Blu-ray DVD. On top of that, game developers, so if you're working with anyone that is supplying any part of your business model to be able to have a final product to your customers, well, game developers were actually building products for multiple consoles. And so they weren't necessarily leveraging just the Blu-ray technology just for PlayStation, because they had to work with also Xbox and PCs and so on. In addition, there was a lot of market shifts that went away from DVDs and Blu-ray technology to online streaming, hence Netflix and a lot of online games and so on. As a result, they absolutely catapulted, and that's just one case. There's also the case of Amazon Fire, which was the same situation. A lot of people don't remember this at all, but Amazon had launched a product, a cell phone, to be able to compete against Android and iOS. But that launch also failed back in 2014. They launched in 2014 and failed in 2015 and completely discontinued the product. The reason why I'm sharing this is because it's important to know that although you can have all the resources in the world, you can still fail a launch. However, a lot of companies clearly do it right? And of course, Amazon is still there. They're one of the best businesses, of course, in the world, as well as Sony, who now have launched their PlayStation 4 and then now PlayStation 5. But you can see here, there's a lot of also brands here that really get it right, from a variety of industries, from Airbnb to an Okta to MailChimp and so on. And of course, everyone knows that Apple's famous strategy of international event to announce your products, your release date with pre-sales, and you're getting that feedback as well. You're optimizing the product as best as you can. Then comes general availability to everyone, and then you collect feedback, you build, you improve for the next year. This is why I mentioned that launch strategy can make or break your business. And 29% of startups fail just because they run out of cash. If you are allocating a lot of resources to build a product and then you launch it and you don't recoup the investments through a positive ROI, then of course you can be in financial trouble. What's clear is that launches are complex. You have a model where you kind of launch and you pray, you see what happens. And you have a model where you're testing, you're learning strategically, and you're trying to find your way to create predictable revenue with every launch that you make. And so what's clear is that there are some that are not effective when you have kind of just an emotional gut feeling, let's go, let's do it fast, let's get out there, without any kind of market analysis or monitoring on the ROI or having the right cross-functional partners in the room. And in another section, you're more data-driven, you're getting customer feedback, you're getting sales feedback, you have a cross-functional alignment, you're doing market analysis. You can already see that there's different ways of approaching a launch. And of course, there's also everything in between. Now, predictable revenue is a term that came from Aaron Ross. If you guys ever read the book, it's a great book, Predictable Revenue. It's basically a framework that creates consistency year over year and provides business growth based on a formula, not necessarily a kind of, in this case, he says last minute hustling and guessing, but that's kind of extreme. But basically, not kind of a last minute in a hurry to get something out. Essentially, you work your way to creating predictable revenue, to being able to predict how much revenue a business will generate constantly year over year, quarter over quarter, based on different types of launches in your different markets. And so your job, or I should say our job here, is to build the right product for the right reasons, assemble the right team and allocate the right resources, crunch the numbers to make sure we can create that profitable experience, enable the company to launch in a sequence, I'll talk about that in a minute, and monitor performance to get feedback and make adjustments along the way. Now, key takeaways here in this presentation. I know we only have about under half an hour, so there's definitely a lot of things that I want to share with you. But the key takeaways is to understand the strategic weight of the launch strategy, to be aware of the top go-to-market mistakes that I've seen companies make across the world, whether I was living in DC, in San Francisco, now in Paris, also had a stint in London. So I kind of had an understanding of different types of businesses, international, local, and how they're working. And then the third point is to learn the 10 steps to really go from product launches to predictable revenue, with, of course, real world examples so that it's as practical as possible and some resources that you can leverage after this talk. So why am I presenting this topic? Just a couple of things. PayFit is just a B2B SaaS platform, really focused on HR tech to automate payroll and several HR features and activities for small businesses. We've been growing incredibly fast across multiple countries in Europe, over 5,000 companies and 5 countries. And of course, launches became my number one priority. That's why I spent so much time understanding how to unlock growth and scale across markets, because we were just growing so fast and we couldn't just keep reinventing the wheel with every single market. We had to find a playbook that would work and that would help us scale internationally. And this is what the company has done in the past 5 years, growing incredibly fast. So this presentation is for VPs, for product marketers on the ground managing their launches. It's for cross-functional partners, and it's for companies at all sizes to really benefit from. A couple of things before I go into some of the details is that take what you need, throw away the rest. Every business is going to be very different. I won't guarantee you have success with everything that I say, but I definitely have a couple points that you can use from this presentation that will help you improve and evolve your overall launch strategy. So In a very quick way, what I want to share is just kind of the 10 different mistakes I've seen people make. One is you're building the wrong product for the wrong reasons, right? There's a very big difference between building a nice to have versus a must have. And that already, if we fail there, the launch will have some slim chances of success. The second thing is poor resource allocation. So since we know now we have a must have we need to create, sometimes we don't allocate the right amount of media to really get the scale and awareness that we need across the different regions. We potentially don't have the right team on the board, and we potentially have not allocated the right amount of resource in terms of engineers and product managers to be able to build something very strong. Third is not having a specific launch goal or KPI, as in, is this a 10K launch? Is it a 100K launch? Is it $1 million launch? Is it a $10 million launch? What are we aiming for here? Because based on this type of launch, the way we approach it will be very different. Also, another mistake I see some B2B businesses make, and even B2C side, is that not launching in a sequence format. I kind of see a launch as a 3-act play where you have your pre-launch where you're interacting, you're introducing, you're building the anticipation, you have a full-blown out launch, but then you also have a post-launch to kind of follow through, where actually a lot of the revenue is also generated in that post-launch sequence. And so a lot of times we just launch it and then that's it. And that's not the end of the game. That's actually really when it starts. The other thing is not having a business plan. So if we know the type of launch we're looking for, if it's a 100K launch, $1 million launch, then we need to kind of backtrack to understand, well, how many leads do we need to generate? How many demos do we need to have? How many customers do we need to create, right? Need to acquire, and how much revenue do we need to bring? We kind of need to work backwards. Now, it doesn't mean you need to spend, a whole quarter putting together a business plan, but you do need to have a one-page kind of snapshot showing exactly what is it you're trying to achieve and how you're going to get there, so that everyone can sign off on. Poor pricing strategy. There's a difference between pricing for growth, and pricing for profitability. They don't always happen at the same time. And sometimes you can try to balance it out to the best of your abilities. But there's a small nuance between pricing for acquisition and pricing for profitability. And we'll talk about that in a couple minutes. The other piece is wrong segmentation. I always, mentioned, with my team and also with the leadership team in general, is that there's a difference between assets and liabilities. You have some segments that will just be horrible. They take long to acquire. Once we acquire them and they're part of the business, they tend to be very complicated and complex to work with. They tend to be unhappy. They leave and they give bad review, right? And then you have on the other extreme end, a customer who's happy, who onboards fast, who stays longer, who shares the product to all of their friends, and that's a very different situation of an asset versus a liability. Someone draining the business, someone increasing the leverage and the presence of the business. The other thing is cross-functional buy-in. One of the mistakes I hear sometimes companies make or do is that it's product marketing launching or it's sales launching, but actually a launch is a cross-functional organization across multiple teams of sales, customer success, product marketing, your operational teams that are going to be very joined together to be able to make this a success. And whenever I see a launch team that has only one department, I already know that they're going to have some mistakes when they go into the field. Either the sales team didn't buy in, so they're discounting it or not selling it. Either customer success is not prepared and they don't have the training assets to be able to answer tickets when they arise. Either product didn't take it seriously because they didn't believe in it, so they did something very fast that's not actual scalable. And so you have, of course, marketing with targeting and so on. So if you don't have the right players in the room, you might get in trouble. And then no risk mitigation. And last but not least, no governance team to be able to manage and monitor the ROI. So now that we know kind of, all these different things that can happen, well, then what you need to do is just kind of reverse it and create a system and a process that helps you make sure that you cover all your elements. And that's exactly what we've done here. So the 10 steps is to go from product launches to predictable revenue. Step 1 is to define the pain you want to solve. And for that, it's building a hypothesis, as in conducting initial research, benchmark, and so on, analyzing the competition, analyzing internal data, speaking across functional partners to be able to build an idea of what we're trying to do. Second is validate. So you actually need to go out there, get out the building, talk to potential customers or prospects or existing customers and cross-functional partners to be able to validate this opportunity, and potentially even get your first sell as a test, as a beta customer, paying beta customer. And then at some point you have to make a call. You have to trust your data and you have to go and do it. Step 2 is assemble the team. For every situation, especially in B2B setting, you're going to tend to have your product team, your marketing counterparts, your sales team, your customer success, and your ops. Marketing builds a product, builds the product. Marketing leads the go-to-market strategy, the different acquisition channels. Sales plays a monumental role in outgoing sales and partnership strategies. Customer success also leverages and adopts, make sure your current customers adopt the new product or new feature, and then your ops teams helps you crunch the numbers. And if you don't have the right team at the beginning, you might be creating an issue in the long term. So one, I think it's very important to determine who needs to be part of the conversation as quickly as possible. I typically, like I mentioned, you have your cross-functional counterparts. Second is schedule a meeting to present what you found. So we found that segment A has a potential massive pain point that if we solve can help generate X amount of revenue and at the same time increase customer satisfaction by X, Y, Z, right? You have to build your business case and share it. The other thing is you want to then specifically ask for resources. Like I need, 3 salespeople, like a couple of SDRs to be able to specifically go test this thing, scale this thing, or I need product marketers or engineers to be able to help build this for 2-3 months so we can test this out. Whatever it is, you have to specifically ask for it or else you won't get the resources. 4 is to, once you've assembled a team, you align on objectives. Are we trying to improve conversion rates? Are we trying to increase margins? Are we trying to improve customer satisfaction? Are we trying to enter a new market? And then you draft your plan, you kick off, and you get to work. 3 is to determine the goal. No launch is created equal. You typically have big business, big bet launches, opening a new market, launching a whole new product. That is an epic launch, how we call it. You have major launches, which is sometimes just a major improvement to a product that exists or major reinforcements. Or 3 is just like a minor launch, really focus on features, a couple upgrades, a couple adoption plays, and then you determine the goal because they're not all the same. An epic launch is going to be resourced very differently than a major launch, than a minor launch. 4 is build the minimum profitable product. Now, minimum profitable product, what I mean is, regardless of where you start, you will need to make sure you've built a product that is a must-have, not nice to have, because you're already doomed if you build a nice to have. Second is to determine the right pricing strategy. Are we going for growth? Are we going for profitability? If we're going for both, a bit of both, that's going to be very important to set out right from the beginning. And then you want to build something that can get fast to market as quickly as possible, right? We don't want to spend a whole year to build and then launch and you realize no one wants it or that you missed the opportunity. And so the objective is really to make sure that we build the right decision based on growth and profitability. 5 is to build the business plan. And I'll give you the recap as well. 5 is to build the business plan. So now that we know what we want to do, well, let's crunch the numbers. How many leads do we need to get to be able to get the amount of demos we need, to be able to get the number of customers we need, to be able to generate the amount of revenue we need? Which traction channels are we going to use? Are we using inbound, outbound, partnerships, pricing strategy, payback strategy? What are we expecting to be at, and profitability? And you don't need to spend, 6 months, 9 months putting this together. You don't need a 20-page document. I mean, just a 1-pager summary of what we need to do is good to go. And I think a lot of people spend way too much time here and they need to make it as simple as possible. The reason why I mention a lot about growth and profitability is because aiming for growth only can help you acquire more customers, but potentially with negative margins, like we've seen with the Sony case at the beginning, which also means that profitability decreases with more customers as you go. And also, it's not sustainable. You're burning through cash. You're acquiring customers that are negative margin, which is very, very dangerous. The other thing is on the other side is profitability. So you're acquiring more customers with positive margins, and so profitability increases as you get more customers, and that's sustainable. That's scaling. And so pricing, we can talk about pricing for a whole 10-day session, but pricing is key because it can either put you in a growing but not profitable example, in a profitable but not growing, or profitable and growing. And so growing but not profitable means that you're selling in high volumes but not making a ton of revenue. You're selling in high volumes and making a lot of revenue, but you're not making profits. The other situation is that you're profitable, but you're not growing fast, which means you're not selling a lot, but every sale you make counts. And then the third piece is a holy grail, where you're growing fast and you're profitable at the same time. And so typically you have 3 dimensions in your pricing strategy. You have your pricing model, as in determining what is going to be, is it going to be a dynamic pricing, fixed pricing, plus user fee, and so on. Pricing unit, as in what is the actual price number? Is it $49 dollars base price plus 5 user per month. What is that actual number? And then 3 is what's the upsell strategy to be able to create more value and capture that value from your existing customers, right? And that's where you have add-ons and you have continuation plan for upsell strategy. And at the end, you have multiple examples, but you have one here that's kind of like Slack, where you have your free situation, you have your standard, your plus, your enterprise grid, but all of this is already baked in to create upsell strategy within the product portfolio, product and pricing strategy. And then, of course, you have to sit down and predict, okay, well, if we generate X amount of leads and amount of demos and so on, with our specific conversion rates that we see today, we can kind of see this on the acquisition side and kind of see this on the upsell side, and then let's go test it out. And that's why it's important to have your ops team here, because if you're not someone who has access to some of these numbers, you need them on the team to be able to help with that. Step 6 is build the right mitigation plan. Now, it doesn't mean you need to have a whole, fleshed out plan, but you do need to answer a couple questions. What if product performance fails? What do we do then? Just have a couple bullet points on your strategy there. What if sales doesn't convert? What are the quick things that we need to do to adjust? And what if competition counters? These are just kind of some easy things very quickly. You want to have bullet points down so that people know as soon as an issue like that happens, you have something you can go to so you can then pull out your create a much more thought out plan. 7 is what we all know is building the launch assets, the landing page, the newsletters, the product videos in all your different languages, German, French, Spanish, English, all these different things you have at your social media campaigns. 8 is train your sales teams to have sales, customer, and also your leadership teams to be able to enable the launch. The reason why this is important is because when I see a launch happen and your CEO didn't write a message and your employees didn't share on social media, I mean, you're missing so much on a network effect that can scale much farther than a acquisition media play. And sometimes people underestimate the network effect that you can have when you're leveraging your existing employees to launch a product. And so it's important to train, to have the right assets, and to create that feedback loop so that right away you can understand what you need to improve for your product as soon as there's sales or loss of sales. 9 is launch in a sequence format. So I'm not going to go into the details. Of course, we're coming to the end, but it's launching in a sequence and not an event. It's a 3-act play. You have your pre-launch, warm-up, introduction, interaction with your organization, interaction with your market. You have your full-blown launch, and then you have your post-launch strategy as well. And then last but not least, you monitor, take notes, and adjust. And so typically, like I mentioned, you have multiple people in the room, at least 5, to be able to orchestrate this launch successfully. To give you a couple of examples, at PayFit, we have launched a steering committee where we have global product, global growth, finance, and your local team, because we're launching in multiple countries. And we always just sit down and look at how we're performing on all our key launches, right? We have our epic, our majors, our minors. We have sponsors, we have launch leads. How do we ensure the success of this project? And if it's not working, how do we improve it along the way? We have clear roles for exec sponsors, clear roles for our launch PMM lead or our PMM lead. And then we have bi-weekly kind of sitting down, seeing how the project is going. And of course, we have a project tracker to be able to see how the project is going. And last but not least, we have our Slack channel so we can be very fast on interactions. And so with that, these are the 10 steps. You have define your pain point you want to solve, assemble your right team, determine the goal and type of launch, build the minimum profitable product, build the business plan, build the risk mitigation plan, build your launch assets, train your team, launch in a sequence format, and monitor ROI so you can take notes. And you rinse and repeat over and over again to a point where basically, if you get this right, you're no longer guessing, you're being precise, you're being effective, and every launch is calculated. There's a plan, there's a bit of a backup plan, there's a sequence strategy, and you have a cross-functional team that's managing the monitoring the ROI of your portfolio of launches. And if you keep doing this, you'll improve the next launch and improve the next launch after that until you've cracked the code for profitable launches at your company. So that is it. I also have a small little gift at the end, so you have plenty of resources you can go through. Whether you're looking to get into some articles, some books, some podcasts, some blogs by consulting firms, or even courses by PMA. There's a bunch of stuff there, so feel free to go into some of these and learn as much as you can. And also feel free to reach out to me, of course, if you have any questions or if I can help in any way. But one thing I want to mention is Rome wasn't built in a day, so take your time and figure it out how to do it step by step along the way. So there you go. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Rose, and thank you for everyone for listening. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or directly on my email, and hope to talk to you soon. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that well. Can you repeat? How do you market language? If I understand the question clearly, I think during your beta phase and even before that, when you're looking to put together a must-have versus a nice-to-have, I think there's a lot of conversations you need to have with your potential prospects to understand what pain are they actually having. You need to understand your buyer persona, as in what are they trying to accomplish, what are the needs that they have, and what's going to help them get there. And as you're interviewing your different personas, you start to listen to some trends in the words they use, and that language is going to be infused not only in your product but also in your marketing campaign and even your sales pitch decks. So if I understood your question correctly, how do you infuse market language, at least for prospects? That's how you would do it. And of course, when you're looking at analysis, I mean, I think you can do benchmark from what already exists in terms of the different competitors, in terms of different products. You can look at third-party reviews as well. If you're launching a whole new product, you've never done it, all these different things and sources out there. And of course, use LinkedIn. There's plenty of people who've already done something you want to do. Reach out to people, ask for advice, get some different examples, and then create your own. Okay, okay. Yeah, I'm having a bit of time hearing, but your question is the pricing strategy. What's the view on the pricing strategy? Ah, I see. What is the view of, so the question is, what is my view on a closed pricing strategy, which means that actually pricing is not disclosed on a website? To be honest, I don't necessarily think there's a right or wrong here. I think it's important to be very in touch with what's happening in the market, and what's happening in your specific region and culture, because sometimes you'll see all your competitors have released prices and sometimes they don't. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but you do need to realize that, especially when you're looking at Challenge Your Sale, which is a great book that came out, you know that a lot of the research of prospects are done way before they even contact you. So it's great for you to be able to, to actually show as much as possible. If you don't want to show numbers, then you do need to show very well the product value and the ROI, like having an ROI calculator so that they can see how much they can save and then ask for a demo. But you do need to make sure that they have some sort of a number in their head even before they get to you. It's either a number of price or either it's a number of how much they can save based on the solution. And that already creates a much better situation, because if they come to you and they have to ask for a demo and they don't want to do that, then you've already missed a chance of having a conversation on price. Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on what you're looking for sure. I think for an organization, I like the book Challenge Your Sell. Is definitely a great book that helps salespeople understand how to sell in a more consultative way, how to be able to actually understand who is going to be the person in the back that's going to influence you and help you close a deal or bring in a new customer. I like the book Predictable Revenue by Aaron Ross that really helps you understand the different types of model. And then last but not least, there's From Zero to 100 Million. It's a book by Mark Roberge from HubSpot. He's no longer at HubSpot, but he wrote a book. I think it's just called the Sales Acceleration Formula. And it talks about how they went from 0 to 100 million in a couple of years. It's a fascinating book, so I definitely urge you to read that book. And it talks about inbound, outbound partnerships. Really, really cool book. So there you go. Those are my three options there. Awesome. Thank you, Rose.
Do you have the creative brief?
Go fish! Do you have the project's deadline? Go fish.
Take back control of work. Reich helps your team work as one.
Got it!
What's up, PMA members? Eric Manser from Crayon, back as your host for day 2 of the Product Marketing Alliance's Product Marketing Festival. Notice I addressed all of you as PMA members. If you don't count yourself amongst that rarefied group, what are you waiting for? Head over to productmarketingalliance.com and sign up now. Members will have access to an astonishing amount of content, including the recordings for each and every session from the festival, plus exclusive articles, templates, frameworks, and much, much more. My company, Crayon, is proud to be the headline sponsor of the 2021 Product Marketing Festival, and we consider our partnership with the PMA to be an incredibly important one. As more and more product marketers find competitive intelligence gathering and dissemination to be part of their job description, we want to make sure that they know that the undisputed industry leader in CI software has their backs. Up next is a very exciting panel discussion about one of the core elements of what it means to be a product marketer: messaging and positioning. Leading the panel is Eve Brill, Senior Head of Product Marketing for Farfetch, and she's joined by some heavy hitters in the industry. The co-founder and COO of Beamer, Spencer Coon, the Senior Product Marketing Manager for Remote, James Doman-Pipe, and the co-founder of GrokSpark, and a friend of mine, Tim Hinds. Enjoy our first panel discussion entitled Positioning and Messaging, Achieving and Measuring Success, and we'll see you back here for some more great content later on today.
Hey, thanks for joining us today. My name is Tim Hinds. I'm the co-founder and product marketer at GrokSpark, and I've got some great panelists with me today. First off, Eve Brill, Senior Head of Product Marketing at Farfetch, Spencer Coon, co-founder and COO at Beamer, and James Doman-Pipe, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Remote and writes the Building Momentum newsletter. Hi, guys.
How's it going? Hey, everyone.
Great. So let's get this kicked off. Eve, why does this specific topic around messaging and positioning and measuring and how to achieve success with it interest you?
Hi there. For me, the reason why I was very excited to be invited to join this panel, I feel that positioning and messaging is a real opportunity for product marketeers to make a difference to the go-to-market strategy. A lot of work that we do is in different organizations, our setup is different, but a lot of what we would consider our go-to-market strategy can be the responsibility of other teams. But where we as product marketeers can really make a difference is fleshing out our positioning, how we see ourselves as a brand, how we want to be, and then the messaging, the actual words, language, and methods that we use to take it to market. So for me, this is really interesting because it's an area where I think product marketeers have a huge chance, have a huge opportunity, to really influence how we present our products, our business, even our brand to the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Super unique role and super unique opportunity within the organization. How about you, Spencer?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm co-founder and COO of Beamer, which is a product release platform that helps notify users about what's new and get feedback. So I'm not a product marketer myself, but I've worked closely with thousands of product teams who are looking to improve positioning and in-app messaging, especially using product updates. So have a good, hopefully more kind of macro feel over what different SaaS players are doing in terms of strategy related to positioning and messaging.
Awesome. James?
Yeah, I agree with what Eve was saying, basically. Positioning is the building blocks of a business. But, if you think about the literal definition of positioning, it's about, occupying a space in your customer's mind. So you have to know, who is that customer? What else is going on for them? What's the gap that exists that you can take? How do you stand out there? How do you compete? And so I think positioning is not just a marketing thing, but it's both a forcing function and an outcome of strategy work. And I think that's really important to elevate product marketing from something that's quite executional focused to something that actually is a big driver in the direction of a business.
Yeah, great points, and good transition to our next point here. So the difference between positioning and messaging, because they do get jammed together pretty much in everything that you're reading about, both in frameworks and just in the way that people talk about them, the way that people perceive them as product marketers. So the difference between positioning and messaging, me personally, the way I like to think about it is the positioning is the way that you want your customers to perceive your product or perceive your brand, that occupying that space in their mind. And the messaging is sort of what you say to give them that perception about you. James, would you agree, disagree with that? Or
yeah, so the way I've been thinking about messaging recently is kind of taking a step back and thinking about it more as, how do we transmit our positioning to our audience? How do we make sure that it's going to resonate with them? How are we telling that story to them? And if you look at media theory, for example, there's tons of stuff there, around word selection, around stereotypes, around tropes, around all these different character development plots, for example, you can use. And I think they're really interesting when you start to think, actually, positioning might be the strategy and how we're going to implement that across a business. Messaging is how we're communicating that, but then actually getting a bit more scientific with it as well, really starting to drill down into how you build that entire narrative and communicate it.
how about you, Eve?
I think it's interesting. I broadly agree with what you've said. Positioning is about this image, brand identity, and messaging is about the language, the words, the visuals, how you're actually communicating that to your audience. What is also important is that positioning is sometimes an internal way of communicating. So sometimes when a product marketer or a marketing team talk about positioning, you talk about your values, your how you would describe your brand identity, the language that you would use to describe your tone of voice. But that isn't necessarily something that you can take to your customer. We're a kind and approachable brand. That doesn't mean anything to a customer. And so it is, okay, how do I show my customer that we are a kind and approachable brand, using visual cues, language, etc., in order to apply that positioning to the particular product or suite of products that I am selling now.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I see a lot of messaging docs that are written more like positioning, where the product marketers will write them out, and it's a lot of internal language. It's a lot of educational messaging, not so much intended to be used directly with the outside world. And it does get really mixed up. Spencer, I don't know if you've seen anything that's similar to that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I would echo what everyone's already said so far about kind of the differences between positioning and messaging. And so maybe I could touch a little bit on, so how do you do it well, kind of knowing what they are. So what we've seen across our customers is that the most successful ones are definitely using like a variety of channels, but focusing nowadays, especially on in-app messaging, also using segmentation to make messaging more relevant, and then asking for feedback directly. So I think those three things are a really important part of positioning and messaging. And then, another interesting trend that we've seen is that the ones that are doing positioning the best, I think, are consistently trying to help their users both understand what their mission is and why it's important. And I think like Intercom, for example, does a really great job of this. So on their changelog, for example, for each and every product update they publish, they'll actually include a list of which specific engineers, designers, product managers, etc., have like worked on that update, and then include like a photo of their headshot. So I think this really helps like their customers relate to and appreciate that, there's this like whole team and mission behind the product that they're using, which I think, really improves their positioning.
Yeah, that must play really well with Intercom's sort of whole brand image of being that support team that's behind you, totally. With being able to communicate with them at any time. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
James, how about you? How do we do it well?
Well, I was just actually thinking back to what Eve was saying before, that you could potentially say that the standard positioning statement is probably the worst thing that could happen in product marketing and marketers and maybe business in general, right? It reduces all the stuff we're doing down to, we are at X for Y and we help them do this. And like Eve said, a lot of people just tend to take that and run with it, right? We are this for this, and that's all they will parrot to prospects, to clients, to customers. I don't think businesses go really far enough to really embody that position, and that's a big part of it. It's not kind of lived authentically. So I think that's really interesting. And then, I don't think enough businesses really understand what the true value is that people are delivering, that they are delivering to their customers. We get lots of discussion between, how do we talk about features and benefits, but we don't really level up and say, actually, what's that, intangible trait or element that someone wants to achieve by buying your software or by using a product. And so I think businesses need to do a lot more of that kind of understanding first.
I agree with that. I think when we talk about when kind of as an industry, as a discipline, we talk about positioning and messaging, a lot of the time we're just looking at what we want to say, a one way. This is what I want to say about my product. This is what I want to say about my business. When actually, I think we need to look at, this is how we're positioned. This is the messaging that we have for, let's say, a specific product launch. But what is it that this product is doing for the customer? What's the product market fit? What's the need that we are fulfilling for our customers? So Spencer talked a lot about segmentation. Okay, if I, for example, have a number of segmentations that I believe this product has a specific need for, I should be creating my messaging around what that segmentation need is, not around how I can message my positioning effectively to them. We have to think about this as a kind of more of a two-way conversation. And I think this is something that product marketeers need to be really conscious of in terms of really fighting for the messaging to be focused around a customer need or a market need, but something that will really make a customer think, oh, this is useful for me, or this fulfills a gap that I don't have. This fulfills a gap or a need for me. And I think that, and to me, that's effective messaging, and that can only really be achieved when you think beyond yourself, and here yourself is the business, the internal pressures that you have, the message that you want to give. This is a really cool product because it does these three things, and we've worked really hard on it, and we've prioritized it, and it's really important for us because we're going to make more money from it, the reasons why products are developed. But actually what you need to think about is, well, this was built for a reason, because we realized that there was a space within the market, or that our customers were asking us for X, and therefore your messaging should really be primarily focused around that. What will the customer be getting, or the market be getting from this? I think that that's a way to devise stronger, more effective messaging.
Yeah, I think you hit on something there that we struggle with as product marketers a lot of the time, which is we get a lot of pressure from product managers and from development teams to push that new feature, launch that new feature, and just talk about that feature. And we need to sort of tell the whole story of why that's important to the audience that they're doing. And there's a lot of frameworks that that help to do that. You know, user stories, job stories. They all help in different ways, and whatever's going to work for your organization is probably going to be the best for you. Don't stick to one framework, I would say, for that part of it. But you know, one thing I did a talk last year on specifically messaging about features, and it was don't not talk about features. And in that, I was trying to get across the point that there are a lot of people who say, don't talk about features, talk about your benefits, or talk about your customers' pains. And we really need to be talking about all of those things. And it's not that you're leaving the features out, it's that the features are sort of the product proof that backs up those benefits, backs up that value. And James, yeah. I know you've got a framework that you use that's sort of specific to that and covers a bit of all those.
Yeah, so I've written about something called kind of a value nugget framework, and you can find out more on my newsletter. It's called Building Momentum, but it's basically a way to package up your products and features and provide a really kind of clear hierarchy to navigate all the way up to you know, the value that you're delivering. So if you think about it, you've got, you know, value at the top, which is kind of an attribute or a state that the buyer hopes to gain. That is delivered through one or more kind of benefits, which are advantages. You know, they're tangible things that your buyer can actually do something with. Those benefits are enabled through features. So, you know, you click this button, you use this piece of the product, or maybe it's something that's not tangible. You know, maybe it's a service element like a dedicated account manager or something like that. And then you are able to back those up with proof points. So, you know, any stats, any testimonials, and there's basically a really nice way to navigate up and down those. So moving up by asking why. So, you know, this benefit delivers this product. This benefit delivers this value. Why? And down by asking how. And I found it a really nice way to make sure that, you know, mostly for sales conversations, you're able to navigate conversations easily and tie everything back to, you know, either features. You're able to raise the conversation up to a more strategic value-led level, or you're able to compete down at the more tangible feature level as well. But also for marketing, you know, giving a really kind of clear hierarchy between this is the product features we have, but this is actually what our customers want to gain from using all of these features, and spreading them out across the buyer journey is really powerful.
Yeah, that's a really similar framework to the way that we do things at GrokSpark, where we basically the main framework that we use by default is sort of company, product, features, benefits, value, challenges, personas, and then we go into different segmentation for industries and things like that. And it's always, this product has these features help provide these benefits contribute to this value, address these challenges, that persona, so that you can tie that whole line between them all. Yeah.
And I think actually I love that framework, and I think one of the skills that product marketeers need to have is to make that seem very simple, is to find a very simple way of communicating, because what James has mentioned sounds like a complex hierarchy, but actually I think that's what we're doing in all of our comms, is trying to ladder up to that value through benefits, through features, and ultimately through value. But as if we're thinking about the role of product marketeers within this, it's the skill to be able to communicate that succinctly, effectively, impactfully within your messaging.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about collaboration a little bit on how you develop that messaging to start with. So Spencer, I know that when you guys are having your customers launch new features and announcing them through your tools, they're working with product management, they're working with development teams. How do you see that typically working between those groups?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, we typically have a variety of different team members that are involved in the product update cycle. And I think that the more different roles you can have involved in every stage of the cycle, so like the before, when you're trying to gauge interest, what features should we be building, the during, when you're actually notifying users, and the after with like lagging indicators like in BS, I think it's just really important to have as many members as you can involved in that, involved in the messaging, involved in understanding the value, like everyone's been touching on like understanding like why are we actually building this feature, what's the problem we're solving. So yeah, I mean, as many people in different roles as you can get involved, like we've definitely seen that work really well.
Yeah. James, how about you?
So one of the biggest things I found is trying to reduce the distance between what, you know, your customers are saying and the feedback loop between your product, messaging, strategy, marketing teams, and just making it super transparent. This is what we're hearing on the ground. This is what we're hearing from the market, from customers, and having, you know, a regular cadence of, you know, whether it's voice of customer, voice of customer process, or whether it's regular reviews and iteration cycles, but making sure that everyone feels they're able to contribute, you know, what they're hearing. Because at the end of the day, you know, sales reps, for example, they're very one-to-one driven. They're all about individual conversations. Marketers, product marketers especially, we're able to zoom out and look at the bigger picture, right? Connect all of the dots between here and there, and actually see, you know, things that other people might not expect. And so for me, I definitely say that collaboration is a key part of that, and just making people feel that they are, you know, feel confident in sharing what they're hearing. Goes a long way to kind of greasing that communication.
Yeah, are there specific places where you guys find particularly useful to collect all of the customer feedback and voice of customer information or research that you're doing that helps to get to the other teams?
So the tool I've used recently is called Dovetail, and it's a user research tool. You can throw everything in there from loads of different sources, start tagging it and creating insights. I use that with a user researcher person in our business. So they manage that kind of process. Worked really, really well. But I think in companies that don't have that, you know, we've done this before just by using Slack, for example. Some people do, you know, get a bit overwhelmed by the notifications and stuff. But, you know, I kind of think of it as just a pulse check, you know, a temperature check. What's happening? What are we hearing? Is there anything that's particularly off? Are we starting to see things that challenge the narrative we're running internally? All of that stuff is really useful, and just, you know, making that communication happen however possible, really.
Eve, let me ask you specifically, how do you represent the voice of the customer within at Farfetch to other teams?
Well, I feel we are often having conversations, kind of echoing what I was saying earlier, trying to understand what's in it for the customer. What is, you know, when we sell this, what are we going to say to the customer that they will be getting from this? How does it relate back to either something we know that there has been a request for, or a need that we have discovered within the market? And we actually recently have started to track product development based on a customer. So who are we developing this product for, and how is it meeting that need? So there are many parts of our business. We have a B2B and a B2C element of the business. Within specifically I work in the B2B part of it, we have many different customers types within there, and they have different needs. So it goes back to what Spencer was saying about our segmentation and how we can, and creating messaging that meets different segmentation needs. But if we look and track, okay, we know that we are building X number of products that are for this particular customer. How can we then create a go-to-market, and specifically the messaging that can really push to the understanding that we already have of those customer needs? And it's not easy. I'm probably one of the larger organizations on this call here, and the bigger the bigger the team, the more product developers and engineers, and the more complicated and the more complicated it is, and the more needs we have to meet within our development process. But that's one way that we can look at, okay, who did we build this feature for originally? Things change along the way with development. Why did we build that feature? And that begins to form the messaging that we would take to market.
Yeah, I would say good luck some of the time with that. If you have a product manager who actually remembers why they built that feature, or why they put it on the roadmap in the first place and had it well documented, you've got a really good product manager. Great. So let's start talking about measuring and proving out the ROI of messaging and positioning. Specific metrics that would be key indicators of this. I'll start off with some that I found really useful, particularly for positioning. One is win-loss rates. So early in the process, if we have a defined win-loss stage that we start counting from, and I'm measuring that over a period of time, I found that particularly positioning, if I'm changing sort of the high level messages that really impact the positioning, and we're changing who we're targeting with that, if I get that right, then win rates start to increase. And if I get that wrong on a change, I'll start to see a decrease. And one of the reasons for that I've seen is that the audience that I'm getting is either closer to the right audience for the product, is closer to a good fit for what the product actually provides. And when I get that wrong, it's you get a whole bunch of people who don't fit what would be that narrow ideal customer profile, and they're just not getting the same value that you would get. Do you guys see something similar to that with a win-loss, or win rates, I should say? Anybody can check.
Yeah, definitely. Win-loss is absolutely super powerful, and try to do as much of it as possible. What's really interesting, I think, with Eve's example is, if you are building this product for a specific customer, like, did they buy it? Why didn't they buy it? How involved were they? If you have a beta process, for example, how was that feedback through that as well? Did they show positive signs and stuff like that? So yeah, I think that's really interesting. So I know we're going to talk about testing and kind of feedback on the positioning process as well. But one of the things that I think is interesting with positioning and ROI specifically is like trying to detach it from, trying to detach the emotional element of, or the internal emotional level of positioning. Like, we've all worked for a CEO who says, I want to build this company that's going to be the best at doing this. And actually that's not how it turns out, or, there's actually a much bigger opportunity somewhere else. And so, again, being able to say, look, here's the ROI of that. We're not seeing traction in this particular segment. We need to, pivot or change our ideal customer profile for this thing. Having, win-loss data, for example, is a really big, component or a piece of evidence for that.
Yeah, and one thing I've noted on win-loss data is you definitely want to do the calls and have the interviews with the customers, talk to them directly, because whatever's in Salesforce is not 100% reliable, especially if it's one where you put in a required field in Salesforce to put in a loss reason for something. Like I remember there was one particular deal that was a $250,000 deal that we lost at a very big client. And the sales rep put in the reason was that they just put it off for another quarter. And I found out that when I did the call with them, that it had actually been, they fired the guy who was in charge of the project, brought in a new person. He was very much in the open source technology space and wanted to do this all with open source technology. And we actually lost to an open source competitor, and not that they were delaying it for a significant reason. And, there's that it's not always accurate just reading what's in the Salesforce description there.
Yeah, I think one good indicator is, can you trust yourself? Can you trust sales teams to put their hand up and say, look, we lost this deal because our sales process messed up. I wasn't good in this conversation. I couldn't answer their questions honestly and confidently. maybe some will, and hopefully we will know some sales reps like that. But otherwise, you're going to be hearing that kind of secondhand, biased, slightly protective feedback from sales and other people who interact with the customer that way. And so, yeah, again, having that direct communication, even using third parties for it, if you've got the budget to do that, just detaches, again, the emotional and the rational side of that conversation.
Yeah, and I think, you get the Gong and Chorus AI recordings now, and people can listen to the sales calls, but it's not a full replacement for what you can do with a direct conversation with a customer from a win-loss interview. What about some other metrics that you guys use for measuring ROI and success of positioning? How about you, Spencer?
I can probably touch some on, especially like the ROI specifically of messaging, since we offer a bunch of in-app messaging tools to our customers. So yeah, it can definitely be tough because there are so many factors that influence things like user engagement, feature adoption, retention. But we really do see like more and more our customers are looking to really prove ROI, by creating cohorts of users and seeing how that specific cohort has interacted with certain messaging, and then checking to see if those cohorts really do things like upgrade more, discover new features more, churn less. So I think it's challenging, but it's something that as a product team, you really need to be offering this capability to your customers. You need to give them the integrations they need or give them the tools they need to be able to do that calculus and really prove it, even though it is difficult.
Yeah, it sounds like part of that you're measuring product adoption and feature adoption after you're sending some of the messages about like new features and things like that. How many people are actually using that feature after the fact and being successful with it?
Yeah, exactly.
Great way to do that.
I think also we should make the point here that positioning and messaging is not only about acquisition and new customers. So exactly what you said, it can play a really important role in retention. So for example, measurement could be percentage of existing clients that adopt a new feature, or a new product. So that ability of, the value, the birds in the hand and the value of an existing customer versus the cost per acquisition of a new customer, that the messaging can play a really important role within that. And that is perhaps one of your segmentations when going back to what Spencer was saying earlier, that how you sell a new feature, a new product to an existing customer would be different messaging from how you sell it to a new customer who doesn't know about your brand or your other products. And I think it's worth thinking about when you're forming messaging, who is the primary audience? How will you get your numbers or whatever your measurement of success is going to be? Who would be your primary target for that? New or existing customers, and therefore how do you form the messaging based on retention versus acquisition?
Yeah, definitely. And as a customer who has received new feature notifications about things that I have requested in the past, and I get a message directly from a customer success team, it feels like a surprise Christmas morning to me whenever I do that. People say don't talk about the features, but if you have customers who have requested specific features and they get that feature and they get that announcement, it's one of the best feelings as a user for that. So yeah,
for me, I'm not sure I agree with don't talk about the features. I think maybe don't always talk about the features.
Right.
But I think, if you're like a real holy grail in product marketing, can be you asked us for X and we have delivered this to you. And for a customer, that I think that is an unbelievable experience, whether it's B2B or B2C, but to know that actually you and your needs are so important to this business that they have built a product around that. I think that is more rare, just across the board. Is very difficult because it's not as simple as, oh, you asked for that, I'll do it. Unfortunately, it's the product development process is way more complex. But if you're able to achieve that, that is an amazing message to give to your customers.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Let's jump into some red herrings around what might not work, or what's a bad measurement of success for messaging or positioning. What do we measure that we think is telling us something and it's actually not? James, you get anything for that?
So, around product launches, for example, feature launches, some companies would be like, oh, we want to launch, the sales deck, these one pages, we want to have this comparison chart done and all that kind of stuff. It's not really going to help you know if you're on the right track. It's just are you doing the busy work rather than actually contributing to moving forward to progress on what it is you're trying to do. So, I think that's really something that I think a lot of product marketers will recognize. I certainly started my product marketing kind of career being, what I would call a PowerPoint monkey, just, blasting out deck after deck. Awful. No one needs to go through that again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are in that PowerPoint and PDF sort of cycle of the hamster wheel of just churning out content that's requested by sales. And then when you give it to them, they say, oh yeah, I forgot I asked for that, a week later. Yeah. Definitely just absolutely churning out pieces of content is top of that list for me. Eva, you have any other ones that you think are bad measurements of?
I don't feel that there is a kind of general rule of bad measurements. I think what my advice would be to product marketeers is to not have a kind of suite of measurements, but to actually think about each launch individually and to ask yourself, how can I know if my positioning or messaging is successful? And I don't think it's I think it's always a combination of factors. So it would be quite unusual that it would be, oh, your messaging is wrong. It's not really as black and white. That would be the messaging is wrong, and that's what means that we haven't hit our targets. It's always a number of factors, and it's a kind of evolving, an evolutionary process to get it right. But I think that it's the role of product marketeers to get the measurements right individually for each project that we work on and each go to market, and to tailor. We have in our skill set, we've got, we know measurements. There's probably a dozen standard measurements that we could use for every campaign. And I think where we can really add value is to be on the front foot and to say, actually, here's the 3 or 4 that I think that are relevant for this specific campaign, in order for us to know if this launch or if this product or feature is successful, and to get consensus on that across key stakeholders within the business, which I know I'm making it sound easier than it is. It's tricky, but to have that from the outset and to say these are the 3 things that will prove that we have been successful, then you don't really get sidetracked by kind of B measurements that may or may not succeed, but that strategically are not going to prove whether you're successful or not.
Yeah, that's a really interesting approach, especially with the being able to do that pushback with the key stakeholders and say, okay, for this specific campaign, we're not going to focus on this measurement, or we're not going to do that. That's just not relevant for that audience or for what we're pushing here. Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about testing and feedback then on specific things. What are some good measurements that you guys are doing, or some good things beyond your typical just A/B message test in Google AdWords that I see as being the one that people default to? How about you, Spencer? Anything that pops up that you guys are doing with Beamer?
Yeah, totally. So I think feedback is just so important, and I really think like every piece of feedback you get, you can view it as like an opportunity to learn something about your positioning in the eyes of your customers, and to not only learn that, but also like reinforce the positioning that you're trying to build. So if you aren't asking for feedback in like a variety of channels about your product in general, and about like specific updates or upcoming features that you're launching, I would say like most likely you're missing out on a pretty big opportunity. And I was actually like recently asked in another podcast I did, like how we deal with negative feedback. And at Beamer, we actually like to say there's no such thing as negative feedback. It's always an opportunity to learn, always an opportunity to like improve your positioning and messaging. And like we've actually already seen as well is that responding to negative feedback can often leave a better impression with the user than if they'd never even had an issue in the first place. So I would just encourage people to look, see feedback in that light, to really actively go out and seek it in a variety of channels and places, and then, make sure you respond to it.
Yeah, that's interesting. There's a lot of stats around how people provide negative feedback and how many people they tell about a negative experience, and then the opportunity that you have to reply to that and how many people they'll tell that you made up for that negative experience after that. And it's way more than if they just had a positive experience from the beginning.
Totally.
Yeah,
we've seen that for sure.
James?
I was just going to say that, not all feedback is equal, right? Whether it's positive or negative. Some positive feedback you're going to get from customers that are nowhere near your ideal customer profile. And actually, it's probably damaging if you take that to heart. The same way with negative customer feedback, you can get negative customer feedback from a customer that, is never going to be a good fit. And actually that learning might help you disqualify them in the future from your, marketing or sales process or something. It's actually really valuable to have. And so, how we are taking that in and taking the time to analyze and apply, critical analysis to feedback. It shouldn't just be a stream, right? It shouldn't just be coming into you. It should be, what are we hearing? How are we going to use that feedback? How are we interpreting it? And that is, going to help you iterate and get better.
Yeah, absolutely. The audience is super important whenever you're getting feedback, especially on messaging. If you're, targeting that specific ICP, or targeting a segment with a campaign, being able to test it with those actual people in that audience rather than getting, like, the worst is just general internal feedback on, oh, I don't like this word in that message, or I don't like to say eliminate, or I don't like to say something else that rubs someone the wrong way. That's just not super useful for it. A/B testing, though, for specific landing pages, for specific campaigns, what's something that you guys do to that you found successful there? How about Eve?
Actually, we, because of the way that we're marketing in our audience, at the moment don't use A/B testing in that way. But I do think that there was just kind of one point that I thought was quite interesting. If we can go back to, because James was talking about the ideal customer and the right customer, and it's that language was quite interesting, I thought, because I feel, we often, like young businesses or businesses that are in their infancy, have a perception, have to have an idea of who it is that they're targeting, but perhaps who you're targeting and who's actually using your product might be two different people, two different customer groups, actually. So I thought it was quite interesting, the language that you used around there in terms of being not the right customer. And it's not critical because we have an idea of who we think is the right customer for our e-commerce products. But it's interesting how often businesses evolve, and you mentioned before, James, about the role of the CEO and how they see the business as well. I was just interested in your what you think about that. I'm sorry, Tim, it's not about the A/B testing.
No, take it where you want to go.
I find it quite interesting. I'd like to hear what you think.
Yeah, so I'd kind of caveat this with just my experiences generally in earlier stage, smaller startups who are trying to get to product market fit or trying to figure out how to scale that. And, an ICP, an ideal customer profile, to me is, a hypothetical representation of what a best fit customer looks like for your business today. There's quite a lot in that, but basically, it's hypothetical, so it's a method for testing and iterating from. It's not kind of a hard and fast rule. It's a representation, so it's kind of a caricature that's easily recognizable, but again, not fixed. Best fit in terms that it's an objective assessment that you can try to make. And also it's something that you can sell to, support, market today, or at least in the very short term. Some of the work that I do with kind of startups I work with on their positioning and messaging is mostly about, they've got 3 or 4 different customer segments that they all think is good. They all want to message for all of them. And we get into it and it's just like, no, you can't do that. Like, you don't really know where you should be going. And so actually there's another layer of, again, leading back to the positioning as a strategy piece. What is the best fit customer for you today? How are you going to understand those people better so that you can then message to them better, so that you can then sell to them better, and just build that kind of self-fulfilling prophecy and loop of insight. And so, yeah, you can think about it in loads of different ways, but it's really interesting how different people approach it.
Yeah, the thing that I've found about ICPs is that they're discovered, not created. Through customer research, you're trying to narrow in on that, and the picture is always changing a little bit of what you're finding is the best customer profile, and it's not just based on who most responds to your messaging and who buys your product, but who is the most profitable product, who is the most profitable audience to go after, right? Because the pricing and how much they're actually spending on the product, and another thing to think about is how much support a customer needs versus someone who can do it all themselves and you don't have to do it. There's a lot of things that I found go into that specific thing. But Eve, for your product and for the size of your company, I imagine you've got multiple segments that you're going after, and you sort of consider each one of those what a smaller company would be considering an ICP there. Yeah. So on that topic of changing things constantly, let's talk a little bit about optimizing and how often we're updating our messaging. And Spencer, I wanted to talk a little bit about you, about that consistent narrative that you were bringing up through product updates and the continuous positioning. Maybe.
Yeah, totally. So, we've seen really that, product updates are an extremely important part of your positioning. And I think really now more than ever. So it shows that your product is alive and evolving to adapt to meet these changing customer needs. And I think positioning today is much more dynamic. So Beamer, we call this continuous positioning. So you need to not only, position your established features and tools, but you need to position yourself as a dynamic company that evolves to meet changing market demands. And then, there's several different stages, which I think I touched on briefly earlier in the product release cycle, which I think each represent a separate opportunity. So there's the before, which is gauging your interest in validating, using a roadmap tool or something similar before release, which is important for understanding what the customer need really is and how it changes. There's the during, so effectively notifying your users when you release those features, using a variety of channels like changelog and messaging, emails, communities, things like that. And then there's the after, which is closing that feedback loop with your lagging indicators like NPS to ensure that your product updates are actually scratching the itch. So I think each of those stages and product changes is really represents an opportunity to learn and reinforce your positioning, and yeah, it's just important to take advantage of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have a lot of conversations with a lot of different product marketers about their positioning and messaging, and one of the things that I hear a lot is positioning overhaul and messaging overhaul projects, and we haven't changed the messaging in a year, or we just don't touch anything. And it amazes me because it's like Heraclitus who said that you can't step in the same river twice. That's market conditions for any product that's competitive, right? Your product's always changing. Your competitors' products are always changing. The market's always changing. The market needs are always changing. Eve, there's specifically about competitors, I think there's a point that you wanted to make about that.
Just one more thing. I mean,
Yeah.
what was occurring to me when you were mentioning all of that is that everything is a work in progress. So
Yeah.
how you launch your product on your official launch day that you've built your go-to-market towards is going to, I think we need to accept, require a lot of refinement to get it absolutely right. It's pretty unlikely that you're going to be bang on perfect with all the elements of the go-to-market mix, of which the messaging is but one of them. And so to look at it in terms of like the evolution of that, so could you tweak the messaging? Perhaps it's the price point. Do you need to revisit the price point? And what you're saying about competitors, maybe a new competitor has entered into the market. So I think all of us, we've not actually talked about this point of competitors, but I think all of us will probably agree that when we're looking to form our positioning and messaging, the role of competitors plays a huge part in that. So how we see ourselves, we also need to look at how do we see ourselves compared to others? What space can we occupy that others don't? What's better or different about our product compared to competitors that really provides us with that differentiation? And just as we're changing, our competitors will be changing as well. So there might be someone that enters the market that's offering some the same service as you, but their business model is at a much lower price. You would need to respond to that either with rethink of your pricing structure, but most likely with messaging to explain what is the value, why would someone pay more for it and come and use your product. And that's an example of how competitors, the ongoing behavior of competitors within the market, new entrants within the market, will influence your positioning and your messaging as you go. So I think it's very much to think about messaging, but the whole go-to-market mix as an evolution. So we have to start somewhere, and that's where the go-to-market is. And hopefully most of it is right, but we need to be thinking about how we can optimize, I guess is the marketing term, but ultimately it's an evolution that includes the messaging as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say if you're doing it right, it's an evolution, not a revolution with your messaging, and constantly tweaking. There are way too many people who launch a feature, launch a product, and then stick with that messaging for a year until they go and change it. James, you have something on that?
Yeah, so I guess I'd call it a mantra maybe. That's a little bit too kind of high level, but this thing that I believe is that focus plus confidence equals momentum. And focus is not just about narrowing your field of vision, but it's about gaining clarity. So the more you're learning, the better that is. And then confidence, the more you can assure yourself that this is going to work. Can you test it internally? Can you start testing it with friendly customers externally? Can you get a few more eyes on it? Can you do some small tests here and there? Can you don't have to jump all the way through to a big launch right now, but what steps can you take to just actually say, we think we're on the right direction for this? And for me, I found that works really well where, in one company, we started testing a slide in our main sales deck narrative to make it a little bit more kind of personable. It worked really well. We got feedback on it. It helped us move deals into the next stage. And it now forms a big part of that kind of entire business and positioning narrative, all because someone one day just said, actually, I think we know, there's something we could do here that, is going to, we think will help trigger a change. And so, when you can move things more organically, there's less of a rush to complete these kind of big positioning projects. And then you start to blend, what works well today with what could work well tomorrow. It just comes together a bit more naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. We're at the top of our time here, so I'd like to wrap this up by just going around and have everyone give one key takeaway or piece of advice for our audience, and talk about something you're looking forward to inside or outside of work. I will start. My key takeaway from this conversation is start with the customer and make that connection from your customer all the way to what you're offering and all the points along the way, their challenges, their pains, their gains, value, benefits, everything that lines up in between there. Help them see that, and you'll start to evolve your messaging into something that actually resonates with them. And the one thing I'm looking forward to outside of work is I am going to be going on paternity leave for the first time here very, very soon, whenever she comes. How about you, Spencer?
Yeah, so takeaways, for me, just the importance of feedback I mentioned before, and then just this idea of like, continuous positioning. So thinking of like every product update and interaction with your customers, an opportunity to strengthen your positioning, to learn something, improve, and just show that you really are that like dynamic company that's evolving with your customers' needs in the market. And then something I'm looking forward to, or just kind of ending on a positive note, I do think it's a really exciting time to be in SaaS and, working with product teams. There's like lots of competition, which, can be intimidating. But I think that, everyone in this cycle, from like the users to the operators, just everybody's pushing, everyone else that's involved to be better. And yeah, I just think that a lot of really positive things are happening. So it's an exciting time.
Awesome. James?
So one thing I'd kind of give the audience is just that something Eve said kind of got me thinking about it. Is just that, try and make sure you're evaluating the assumptions that you have internally about your customer, about what they're doing, what they're thinking about. There's actually a really interesting exercise you can do called a custom empathy map. I've written about it before. And it's a really good way to see, what people in your team actually think your customers care about. And then you can see where the gaps are as well. And hopefully get everyone around one picture of the customer is really useful. Something I'm looking forward to is when travel can restart and I can go on holiday, because I'm feeling pretty pale at the minute.
We're all there. Eve?
I think there's a theme going through here, but for me, definitely the two C's, customers and competitors. Don't think of messaging as something that is fixed, that you write, but that it should be an evolving process based on how your customers are responding to it, and also how your competitors are behaving. So really, it is, yes, it's about customers and competitors, but it's about a constant evolution, and that's not just about messaging. I think that's in all the go-to-market and communications that we do as product marketeers. I think we shouldn't see a launch as the end of our journey, but the start of getting to the perfection that we all want to see. In terms of what I'm looking forward to, mine's very short term, because when I finish up today, I'm going to treat myself to an ice cream and go for a nice little walk, as it's such a nice day in London today. So that will be, now everyone in this call will fancy an ice cream, I guess. So that will be my end to the day. But thank you so much, and thanks very much everyone for the conversation.
Yeah, thanks to everyone, and thanks to the PMA for putting this on.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been really good. Thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thanks guys. See ya. Take care. Bye-bye.
Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands, with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Your customers are your best spokespeople, so you want to make sure your prospects hear what they have to say. After all, trusted endorsements can drive faster sales cycles and boost marketing conversions, which helps you unlock faster growth. But when it comes to going on the record, even your best customers can go silent, and who can blame them? Partnering on case studies is time-consuming, and it's painful to work through the legal approvals often required. Luckily, there's another way. With TechValidate by SurveyMonkey, you can easily capture feedback from satisfied customers and transform it into powerful content, like verified case studies, testimonials, and reviews. Want charts that show ROI, cost savings, or competitive differentiation? You got it. With our platform, you'll quickly build an arsenal of highly targeted social proof points, segmented by industry, company size, or buyer persona. You'll get the tools to easily deploy your new customer evidence into top marketing channels and put it in front of your sales team to share with prospects. Plus, there's no need to wait for legal for approvals. With TechValidate, your customers can opt to share their name or provide testimonials anonymously, with all customer evidence validated by a trusted third party. That's why hundreds of companies, big and small, use TechValidate to get social proof at scale. Ready to see how it works? Watch our product tour today.
Good early morning to those of you just joining us from the West Coast of the United States, where it's still pretty early for each of you, and welcome back to the 2021 PMA Product Marketing Festival. I'm Eric Manser, your host for the day's events, and the VP of Product Marketing at Crayon, a market and competitive intelligence software company. My company, Crayon, is the title sponsor of this year's Product Marketing Festival, and we couldn't be more excited about it. I myself have been involved with the Product Marketing Alliance for several years now, when I was first invited to a private Slack team chock full of people just like me, product marketers in search of a community where we could share ideas and learn from each other. Just last month, I wrote my first post for the Product Marketing Alliance blog, all about speaking with the voice of the customer. So our next presentation is not just topical for me personally, but should be for every product marketer who acts as a key conduit of information between their client base and their organization. The presentation is called Fueling Your Organization with Customer Proof Points. Why now? And it's delivering it is Jennifer Simonson, Senior Customer Success Manager for TechValidate by SurveyMonkey. Sit back, enjoy, and wake up, San Francisco. I have always wanted to say that.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Product Marketing Festival. Thank you so much for joining us, and rounding out our first session of the content day today, we are joined by the fantastic Jen from TechValidate by SurveyMonkey. Just before I hand over to you, Jen, I just want to remind everyone we are going to be doing a live Q&A at the end of this session. So if there's any bits of feedback, questions, comments that you want to run by Jen, pop them in the chat and I will be posing them to her after the session. So yeah, over to you, Jen.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rose. And hi there, everyone. My name is Jen Simonson, and I'm a Senior Customer Success Manager at SurveyMonkey. So I'm here to talk to you today about TechValidate by SurveyMonkey and the value it can bring to sales and marketing teams.
Recording in progress.
By automating their voice of customer initiatives. So we'll talk through why voice of customer is so important to organizations today and how TechValidate can help accelerate sales and identify customer advocates. So what is TechValidate? So essentially, TechValidate is a marketer's dream tool in the sense of a really targeted set of questions to your customers. And then based on how your customers respond to those questions, you can automatically create marketing and sales content and also identify customer references and advocates at scale. And that's really one of the biggest differentiators between TechValidate and SurveyMonkey, and TechValidate and really any other survey tool out there, is this ability to automatically turn your customer feedback into content. And that content really spans across the board in terms of different types of content that you can create. So you can create charts, statistics, case studies, and customer testimonials that are all branded with your logo. They're also branded by TechValidate. And so that's a big reason why a lot of our customers work with us, is to pull in that third-party validation. So when you do start sharing, these statistics or these testimonials saying all this great stuff about your company, you can cite TechValidate as the source of that information. And then folks know that you did this third-party research with an outside source and you're not just making up all this great stuff. So let's dive into some of the content that you can create. So looking at the content here, these are some standard type of charts and statistics you can publish from your survey questions. So let's take a look at that chart on the left there. We can reverse engineer that into assuming that Cisco probably asked a question asking, please identify the most impactful benefits you've seen since working with AMP for endpoints. And then each one of those bar lines, that was an answer choice that Cisco included in that question. So you can create those overall chart views for each question, but then you can also publish individual proof points from each of those answer choices as well. So if we're still looking at that chart there, that top line, improved security effectiveness at 86%. If you carry that over to that statement on the left there, on the right, 86% of surveyed customers were able to improve security effectiveness with AMP for endpoints. So you'll notice essentially word for word, the tool is going to pull in those answer choices and create those statements that you can publish. So that's where myself and my team, we spend a lot of time with customers, is in your question design phase and making sure that all of the questions we're asking and all of the answer choices we're including are going to ultimately create content that's impactful and that you want to publish. We can also add competitive spin to some of the questions that we're asking. So a really common way of doing this is just asking your customers to identify your competitors. So if you're looking at that chart on the left there, really common use case, listing out some of your top competitors. And then a really nice feature of TechValidate is our cross-tabbing feature. So that allows you to cross-tab, say, this competitor question against every other question that we're asking in the survey. And so then you'd be able to create content that says X% of customers that switched from competitor X, these are all of the benefits they've seen since switching to our company. I'd say one of the biggest wins for our customers are the automation of these case studies. So just with a single click of a button, the tool pulls in all of the answers that a single respondent gives to you and then creates this nice customer snapshot or these case studies. So there's a few ways that we see customers leveraging these. I'd say the top use case is to give these to your sales team. So it's really easy to slice and dice these case studies, find a customer story that's maybe in the same industry or the same job role as a prospect that a sales rep is talking to, And then these are nice kind of conversation starters and talking points to walk through on those conversations that they're having. I've also heard, though, customers are sharing these back with the respondent or back with the customer that gave them that survey response and starting that conversation there. So, say, hey, thanks so much for taking our recent survey. It sounds like you're having a really great experience with us. We have this really nice customer case study from you. Would you be willing to maybe speak to us further and do a longer format case study? So it's a nice way of opening the door to maybe those further references that you can reach out to. And also, these case studies are a really great starting point when we're in that question design phase. So I often ask my customers, think about these case studies. What do you want to highlight in each of these 3 sections? So there's challenges, use case, and results. So what challenges do you think your customers are experiencing before seeking out your company, before seeking out your solution? What's prompting them to reach out? For that use case section, asking questions around what are the most impactful features or capabilities to your organization? How are you deploying our solution in your day-to-day environment? And then in that results section, asking some questions around the benefits and results they've seen since working with you. So we're trying to create this customer story with the survey questions we're asking, and then you can create these really nice content pieces to publish out from. And then finally, we always recommend including 1 or 2 open-ended questions and then giving your customers the ability to type in their own response. And a really nice feature of TechValidate allows you to slightly make some edits to these statements. So if there's spelling or grammar errors, or if they're ever referring to the product as it, we encourage our customers to go in and make those edits, because ultimately we want you to share these images externally, this content externally, and we know that it needs to look as perfect as possible. So I am a visual learner, and I think it's helpful to see what the actual tool looks like and see how easy it is to create some of this content. So I'm going to hop into the TechValidate platform here. And so after a customer launches a project and they have some survey results back, a few things that we display for you. So we give you some baseline metrics of satisfaction ratings. One of the questions that we include for you is the Net Promoter Score question. So we ask them to rate you on a score of 0 to 10, how likely they are to recommend to a friend or a colleague. So you get a really nice NPS score there, as well as an average rating. And then for publishing content, let's go to this responses by question tab. So this is going to show us every question that we asked in the survey, and then give me the ability to create some content. So let's look at this question 1 here. If I click this charts button next to question 1, it's going to automatically create this chart for me. Has my company logo there, has TechValidate logo there. And then I can modify the view of this chart. I can also filter the data in this chart. So this is another big win with our customers, is the ability to really drill down into the survey responses you're getting. So let's say we want to focus on a particular industry, let's say financial services. And so now those percentages are automatically adjusting for you, as well as the source down below. And then you can also add titles to any of the content that you're creating to really kind of tell the story of what that image is showing. And then let's take a look at some case studies. So if we go to this responses by person tab, this will show us every respondent to the survey. And then a really nice way of filtering your survey responses is actually by your Net Promoter Score that you're getting from your customers. So if I select this promoters filter, I'm asking the tool to only show me customers that scored us as a 9 or a 10 for likely to recommend. So this is really parsing out your happiest customers and making it really easy for you to identify those responses that you probably want to publish content from. So now let's take a look at some of these responses. And if we click into their full name, it's giving me this option here to preview their case study. So when I click on that button, it's automatically creating this really nice customer snapshot for me. So I say this is one of the biggest wins for our customers, is just the automation of these case studies, A lot of times, it can take weeks or even months to get these customers case studies, get approvals, get the time to do the interviews with the customer, write up the case study after. So honestly, within a 2-week, 2 or 4 week turnaround, we can send these surveys out and you can have these case studies ready at your fingertips. And then one last big win for our customers are collecting your reference volunteers. So this is another question that we include in the survey for you is, are any of you willing to be an additional reference for us? And they can select from this list of different activities. So you'll get a list of your reference volunteers here on a project by project basis. But then the tool is also going to start storing all of your reference volunteers in this sidebar here. So it's just a really nice way of building out your reference program, identifying customers in a one-off basis as well. A really common use case I hear from customers is, say your customer success team is having a really great conversation with their customer. They think they'd be a great customer for a case study or a great customer reference. So a common activity there is your CS team could share a TechValidate survey in their follow-up with that customer. And then that's an automatic case study or that's an automatic customer reference that you've identified if they complete that survey. And then I'm going to take it a step further. So for us, the real value of TechValidate comes when our customers start leveraging their content or their survey results in their marketing and sales initiatives. And those use cases really span across the board in terms of, creating social posts, website updates, blog posts, press releases, sales enablement content. There's really no end to where pulling in customer validated content can be impactful for your business. So let's take a look at a few examples. So Twitter and LinkedIn, those tend to be some really common channels for sharing content, especially in that snackable kind of TechValidate format that you can publish from the tool. A really fun thing that customers adopted a few years ago was hashtag TechFactFriday. So every Friday you could tweet out a fun new quote or a new statistic about your company. Similar use case here for LinkedIn. So seeing a lot of customers share content on their vendor profiles for LinkedIn. You'll notice here, and in that use case we just looked at too, sometimes customers rebrand their survey results. So if you need to fit the design of your web page or whatever resource you're working on, that's totally okay. We just ask that customers are citing back to TechValidate in some way to maintain that third-party validation. And then a really common use case for your sales team too can just be asking them to share content from their own social channels. So sharing from their LinkedIn profiles, their own Twitter, and just reaching out to their own networks that way. And then we're seeing a lot of customers pull in their content into web pages on their websites or product pages for their website. So this is a really great example from Cisco here for their collaboration product for WebEx. So they pulled in a nice quote here, and then they also rebranded some nice statistics. So they're pulling in a 93, 91% there, and then they're simply citing back to TechValidate. So a really great example of rebranding, fitting the design of their web page, but still maintaining that third-party validation. And then Cisco also took this citation a step further. So if I click on this source TechValidate, Cisco embedded the public page for that statistic. So the idea behind this is it's putting more attention on that third-party validation. So now folks can travel to a third site and say, hey, Cisco did actually do this research with TechValidate. But I also like to point this out. You'll notice that Cisco only has a source of 34 there. So a lot of times customers come in and they wonder, what needs to be statistically relevant in terms of a source size in order to share that type of content. And I like to remind customers, with TechValidate, we really are targeting your happiest and your most engaged customers. And we're also targeting really specific customers. So it shouldn't always be expected that you're going to have hundreds and hundreds of customers using a certain feature or a certain product. We really are reaching out, trying to get the best of the best customer stories. So a lot of times, sometimes customers will only get 10 to 20 responses back. And a really common use case of that is just maybe rebranding it and hiding a smaller source size behind a citation like source TechValidate. One other example here, so this is a great blog post from Google Cloud. They did more of a thought leadership type survey. So instead of asking questions specific to their brand, they were really reaching out to their customers and asking about, what type of improvements are they looking for from the industry, and really positioning themselves as a leader in that space, coming out of these thought leadership type of results. So they pulled in some nice percentages here and a few quotes, and then they're simply citing TechValidate in the source down below. So it's entirely up to our customers, how much attention they want to put on that citation or put on that source. Some customers include a small paragraph about us, and other customers include us in the site a small print citation. It's really all what kind of use case you're working on. And then with just a few minutes left here, I also want to show our Salesforce integration. So this is really helpful for enabling your sales team to actually use the content that you're creating. So we all know that sometimes it can be difficult, getting sales folks to go to different resources or different platforms to get content. So what this Salesforce integration does is it pulls in this TechValidate tab that anybody can add to their navigation toolbar. And then it's just directly mirroring all of the content that you're creating inside TechValidate and then pushing that through to Salesforce. And so what's really nice behind this is now your sales team is enabled to find, those customer stories that they need. So say they have a prospect call coming up with a certain type of job role and maybe a certain type of company size, they can apply those own filters themselves and then find those case studies that they need. And so I'm going to land here on this last page here. And I would love to connect with anybody else after this session. I've been working with TechValidate for 6 years now, so I cannot say enough good things about it. And yeah, definitely see the value that it's brought to our customers. So thank you all for your time.
It's a fantastic session, Jen, and thank you so much for taking us through all those different use cases and examples. It's great to see it kind of come to life. We've got a couple of questions that I'd just love to run through with you. So the first one is going to be from Dan, and it says, are your customers able to review and approve the content before it is published in the TechValidate library?
Absolutely. So all of your survey results they're not public until you hit that publish button. And before you hit publish, you have full capabilities to even reword some of those statements. If there's a negative sentiment that your customers have included in their response, you can actually remove that negative sentiment when you're publishing. But we do have a content team that reviews all content that our customers are publishing. So we are staying true to that unbiased third-party source where, we don't allow customers to just make up statements or make up quotes. We really do try and stick to those spelling and grammar errors.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's also been a lot of chatter about actually the difficulty there is sometimes in collecting customer testimonials and case studies and things like that. So I wondered if you had any tips to share with the group on how do you actually get those case studies to work with.
Yeah, so in terms of, the audience that we're reaching out to, with TechValidate, we really do recommend kind of cherry picking that list. So, it's okay to maybe exclude customers that are not having a great experience. We recommend, if you have any current NPS data on your customers, any sort of information on customers that are really happy, those customers tend to be more likely to respond to TechValidate surveys. Also, customers that are just recently engaged with your company. So, if you're able to pull a list of contacts that have reached out to a support team or an account management team within the last 6 to 9 months, they're already actively engaging with the company, so they're more likely to respond. And then in terms of, the case studies that you get from those responses, that's what our team is also there to help our customers in, is we want to make sure that the questions we're asking in the survey are going to create a case study. So we don't ask internal type of questions like what type of improvements do you want to see? How satisfied are you with this? We really are trying to get to that customer story in terms of challenges that you're solving for them and the benefits that they're seeing.
Yeah, definitely. I guess it's just really defining the difference between, kind of user research and product research versus what is a customer case study and kind of utilizing that as a product marketer.
Exactly.
Amazing. So yeah, thank you so much for the session again, Jen. It was really informative, and like Jen mentioned, feel free to reach out to her or the TechValidate team with any further questions. And yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you again. We are wrapping up now, but we will be back live in 1 hour's time for an autumn session then. So do join us then. Have a quick break, have a quick refresher, and thanks again, Jen.
Thank you, Rose. Bye, everyone.